So we are past the most difficult part of setting it up. Thank you, everyone, for coming here. Hope you're having a great day. So today I'm here to share my observations with working with multiple clients, and pretty much played the different roles. Like I started as like a developer, like maybe most of you folks, like within a cocoon, just looking at one application or one product, just writing code and thinking, writing clean code, testable code is the only thing that matters. And then over time, got experience to kind of do more of what's we call DevOps work these days. So kind of grew more interest in that. And that is like the early days of cloud. So that was like more fascinating. And that kind of continued to do that during the days of containers and more of cloud native adoption. And more in the recent years, like especially as a consultant, I get opportunity to kind of work with different clients at different levels of technology maturity. Say, for example, like some at the early spectrum of just starting to adopt technology, but some at the other end of the spectrum of early adopters of cloud, and now what next? What can I do to actually differentiate the business? So today what I want to do is really want to kind of share my observations in terms of where the organizations are, and especially in the journey of building an internal platform, how are we doing it today, and the key observations and learnings there. So when we say platform, again, platform is such an abstract, overloaded term, right? Like it means different things to different people. So just want to kind of set the context for today's talk. So when you say platform, it can mean a business platform, say a model like an Uber or eBay, where your actual business model itself to bring together different people where they can actually exchange value in a medium. And the other end of the platform is like our PaaS product. So any cloud provider or service provider, technology product provider, so Heroku or Azure or AWS. So that's the other end of the spectrum. And what we want to look at today is that what's there in the middle, what we call as like internal platform. So that's the platform which organizations who are like kind of early adopters of technology, early adopters of cloud, and they're kind of at a point where that I need to really scale my business beyond what I'm doing today, and then internally looking at their technology maturity, and then looking to see, okay, what can I do to actually accelerate the way I build products. So that's the part of the definition of the platform that we want to look at today. And I want to start with this clear, crisp definition of an internal platform. So this is from Evan Butcher. I think he also spoke earlier yesterday here. So the way he coins is that a digital platform is basically a collection of foundational self-service APIs, services, tools, knowledge, and support, which are together bundled and arranged as a compelling internal product. So it's kind of a simple definition, but I really want to kind of take a few seconds and really look at a couple of key terms within this definition. So the first thing to kind of look at is the word self-service. So anything that's built as a platform offering internally, the first the criteria should be self-serviceable. So when you say self-service, it means that there is very minimal human-to-human interaction. There's a very clear, crisp understanding of what this particular capability or offering is about, and when should someone use it, and when should I not use it, and how do I use it, and how do I actually take it to production. So without a lot of that friction and blockage or human-to-human communication. So how can that actually happen more seamlessly? And the second, and I feel like it's the part we kind of miss the most, is that it's actually a collection of different things. So it is just not about a PaaS or a layer built on your Azure or GCP or AWS offering. So it is just not an API. It's just not like a simple monolith doing all your internal business logic. But it's basically a collection of different offerings. And the offerings is like it could be a tool, it could be an API, it could be a service, but it can also be a knowledge, it can also be a capability. So it can be of different forms, and a really good internal platform should actually have a combination of these things over a period of time. And that's the last part, like kind of what you're building internally and offering it to your internal customers should be compelling. So when you say compelling, which means that it actually solves a real problem of their day. So in case of an internal platform, your customers are basically other teams who are actually building in apps or building your products for your end customers. So they have a particular need, particular problem. So what you're doing and offering them should actually make it easier in their journey. So that's kind of a key thing to remember. And from my experience, in most cases, actually, even locally, if you talk about examples from REA, examples from Atlassian, or in any other place that we pick, in most cases, actually, the platform, the idea of a platform starts more organically. So when you say organically, there might be like 2 or 3 teams, or there might be a couple of teams within a particular domain, and they see a common problem or a common need. Hey, instead of everybody actually going and solving this problem of deployability or pipeline or security or scalability, so let's just do it together. So it starts more organically, where one team might be like, hey, I've done something, and it's a lot more advanced. So why don't you just go and use the same thing without kind of repeating the whole cycle again? So in a lot of organizations, just the idea of platform itself started very organically. But it also kind of, over time, that itself becomes a challenge. Because it starts more organically, and it just kind of, sometimes people, because of their goodwill or because of their kind of investment, and I build something in my team, and I feel like it's my baby, I need to take care of it. So it's like a lot of that support, a lot of that investment, and a lot of that actually comes outside of a proper planning. So over time, actually, that itself becomes a friction. So in silos, actually, different teams might be solving the same problem. And because of that, you have a lack of consistency, and also not necessarily what you are building as a common service or a common offering might be actually aligned with your business problem. So actually, I thought it would be good to share a couple of anonymized quotes from some of the work that I've done, and just to quickly look at it. So this is something I heard from one of the big organizations, like a dev consuming the platform. So they looked at what the platform engineering team had built, and it didn't actually solve their core problem. And the key thing to kind of understand from here is if you are building an internal platform, you need to really understand who your customers are, what their needs, and make sure that you're actually building to it. So it's just not about building a sophisticated solution. So we don't have a lot of time to go into the details, but to quickly give you an idea, a lot of the techniques and the frameworks and the experiences in a typical product management world is applicable with an internal platform as well. So you can use different techniques to really understand what you're building. What you're building, is it actually useful to your customers? Is that even feasible? And is this the most valuable thing? So you might have heard about these techniques, like doing a value proposition canvas, where you're trying to understand what are the pain points of my customers, what are the gains of my customers, and making sure that what you're building aligns to it. Or you can use other techniques like business model canvas to try and understand the diversity of your customers, what their needs are, and using these inputs as a means to even prioritize what you're going to build. So similarly, one of the other quote is someone is so it's an organization really big at scale. So they were pretty much indirectly forcing teams to actually use the internal product. So one of the developers felt that they literally had to go and talk to 8 different teams. Everybody comes within that tech platform group or whatever they're called. But they had to talk to 8 distinct teams to actually get something simple done. And again, like here, kind of the thing to remember is that as an internal platform, when you're building it right, but also adhering to what you promised to your customers, so adhering to the contract. And to give you a sample of like kind of what you have seen in the real world, so there are kind of a lot of mismatch in the expectations. So it could be things like, we think it is self-serviceable. So as a platform team, as a developer within the platform team, I think what I'm building is self-serviceable. But it may not be to the degree of what your customers are actually expecting it to be. Or it could be that like you have multiple offerings doing the same thing. So multiple different ways to, say, deploy a container. So you thought you need to kind of go and adopt the most recent and the latest way to deploy container. But probably your customers don't need n number of ways to do the same thing. And also like, where platform team could be actually a blocker to your customers, where I just need to write a simple, change a line of code, and I want to deploy it. And if I do it myself within my team, it's a lot more easier compared to using the platform offering and then building it. And similarly, like, especially in the cases where if your organization is global and if you're present across multiple countries, and if the platform team is present in one corner of it or one part of your organization, again, that could be a friction and challenge in adoption. So again, those are the things to kind of keep in mind, and going back to your fundamentals of understanding, OK, is it really self-serviceable, understanding the definitions of it. And again, similarly, the other quote is like, the team, they have been building these for such a long time, but we can't wait for it, so we had to kind of move on with our own solution. So here, like kind of the key observation is that like as a platform team, evaluate if you're actually building the minimum viable product. And also like try and understand how do you make it easy for your customers to actually understand your offerings. So one thing I want to share, this is like from typical software product life cycle. So where we talk about like different phases, start as an experiment, then alpha, then beta, then you go into general availability, then something might be deprecated and removed. So it's really important to kind of bring that life cycle into your platform life cycle as well. So when you're starting something, so start it more with an experimentation mode. And then like it could involve like you might be working closely with 1 or 2 other consumer teams, and then working closely with them to check the idea. And then moves into an alpha phase where you kind of expand it and validate it with a couple of teams, and then it goes into beta. And then like goes into like general availability, where that becomes your default option of solving the problem. I think what's important is that to kind of spend a bit more quality time in this phase and try and define the criteria for your organization. So what it means to move from experimentation to alpha. So what criteria should it satisfy? So similarly, what it means to move from beta to general availability. So if we clearly define that, it should have this degree of documentation. It should have this degree of self-serviceability. It should have the degree of support. So if you clearly define all that, one, it kind of makes it very clear between the platform team and between your customers in terms of what to expect. But also it makes it very clear to understand what's the level of investment that's required. So what's the level of development that needs to happen? What's the level of support that needs to be there for you to maintain that level of offering? So it's very important. Again, it might mean slightly different to different organization. So I would strongly recommend take this and go into a very detailed definition of what it means to your place. To give you a very, very high example, it could be something like this, where you may kind of talk about consumers, how many consumers you interact with in that particular phase, and you might talk about the experiences, and you might talk about like typical duration. And again, key thing to remember is that it is just not about general availability, right? But also being more mindful of, OK, when do I actually deprecate something? And if something is deprecated, making sure that there are no active consumers and making sure that it's actually properly and completely removed. So that's also like kind of very important to keep in mind. And again, like kind of talking about like, from the quote, the key pain point was, I need to talk to 8 different teams. And again, every interaction is different to get something simple done. Again, like kind of just referencing, the interaction modes. This is from the team topologies book where it talks about different team formations, when one works with what. So just like mapping it back to your product lifecycle phase. So if something is in experimentation, then think about approaching it in a more collaborative way. And if something is in like an alpha or a beta, and again, it's a degree of collaboration, but how you work on it might vary slightly. But when something goes into general availability, then making sure that it's offered as a service, which means it's self-serviceable, is like kind of critical. And again, the key thing to remember is the last phase. When something is deprecated or when something is removed, again, as a platform team, how do you facilitate it? How do you make it easy for a particular team to actually move on or go to a next version or go and adopt a different offering from the platform? I think you should think about those as well as you're building new things. And the other one is from again another developer, so where they think their work is actually further delayed if they have to use a platform. So for them, even to make a simple change, they have to kind of wait a few iterations because they have a block waiting on the platform team. So again, like kind of thing to remember is like to try and understand as your platform grows, as you're kind of offering multiple capabilities, what is going to be your contribution models? Because you don't want to be blocking the critical path of the delivery. So what is that you could do? So when we start initial phase of the platform, that's how we kind of design our teams. So we think we need some kind of a tech leadership, delivery leadership, and a product leadership for the platform. And within platform, there are going to be multiple teams. So some might be looking at, say, scalability. Some might be looking at storage. Some might be looking at eventing. So that's how the teams are organized. But if you actually look at it, like the way the interactions happen, if you think about the convoy slide, the way the organization is structured is very different. So again, like contribution model, so it will evolve over time. So what you have on day 1 of your platform would be very different from day N of your platform. So again, to really think about like mapping it back to the product life cycle, when something is an experiment or alpha, so how can you actually treat it more like a joint venture? So working together, so you have like key people from platform team, but also your customers. But when something is in beta and general availability, can you make it available through a feature request? And when something is in beta, can you have people who are like trusted from particular teams who might be able to commit code to your code base? And when something is in general availability, are there changes which are only config? So which is not like kind of changing my core code. So can I allow my customers to make those changes safely? And also, again, like in a very mature organizations, you might be able to actually even take it to the level of treating it as like an internal open source products. So just a quick recap, like kind of the last 20-ish minutes. So to build a really good internal platform, some of the characteristics, this is not the holistic, doesn't cover everything, but some of the key things to remember are like treat it like a product, build it like a product, know your customers, build it for your customers, and think about the sensible defaults. So it is just not about building something for today, but also making sure that the offering should actually evolve, mature, have the right level of support. And again, start with the minimum viable product, but also make sure that there is the right level of investment to continue that development, and also plan for scaling. So think about different collaboration models there as you grow. Yeah, that's it. And yeah, it's a very short time, but I'm more than happy to kind of hear your journey, your observations, and happy to take any questions.
Every organization have a different structure, the way the platform teams organize. Sometimes they have development teams together. In your view, what are the key success roles to enable successful adoption of platform?
I think like kind of you'll have like all the typical roles which are required to actually build the product. But also it is really good to have someone with the product background being core part of the team right from day one. Because I'm, at least like as an engineer, like kind of, I don't have all the techniques. I don't have the means to actually go interact and understand, the customers. So it's really good. I've seen, places where they actually treat the internal product roles with equal importance. Like they have a different perspective altogether.
Thank you. Any more questions, team?
So you talk about building a default kind of thing so that everybody can use it, different teams can use it. However, if suppose two teams are building and one team is dependent on the functionality per se from the different team, however their production deployment and releases don't align with us, where should we draw a line so that we build it ourselves so that we can push it to production when we have our production?
Yeah, sure. I think that's like a very valid scenario happens in most places. I think like kind of the whole like logic of an internal platform comes with an org level strategic direction. So at an organization, so if they decide that for me to grow, for me to be like scale strategically, I think that I need to have an internal platform. So that's where kind of the idea comes from. But also we need to remember that like a lot of the work in the platform is going to be front loaded, which means that you're going to reap the benefits only at a later stage, whereas you need to have a lot more investment during the early days of it. So if there is a team who are waiting for the platform to actually build something, and if it's very critical, then I think probably the easiest option is for them to actually collaborate. Like how can I actually offer some effort from my end? How can I borrow effort from the consumer's end? And together we can actually build it faster instead of trying going in a silo and trying to build things on your own. But again, that needs to come with leadership support. That needs to come with a goal.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.